Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for bringing your students, high school teachers today. I know that it is a lot of work, and I know most of you teach this course on just one prep out of your whole day, and so for you to come here and to take the time to bring your students, it's just so wonderful. And thank you, college partners, for always being so willing to come out to events like this, to set up and to bring awesome giveaways for the students and to spend all day talking with our students about your wonderful programs. I am Charlie Carlson. If you don't know me, I took over Jeff Dyer. I don't know if he's in the room. He's over there. Jeff Dyer's position as a teacher recruitment program advisor at DESE. And so this is my first time to do this event, and I cannot believe how calm and cool he always is, because this was a lot. So I appreciate you. Today we wanted to give you some food, feed you a little bit. I don't know how clear this was, so I'm going to say it right now. You are welcome to eat at any of the lunch rotations. College folks out there, teachers, there's 3 lunch rotations starting right after this session, and you are welcome to grab food during any of those sessions that you please. So that, I'm not sure if that was super clear, but now hopefully it is. I'm sorry. So Secretary Key unveiled this kind of idea, our educator roadmap today at the opening session, and he's going to talk a bit about it to you guys, and then Dr. Kramers from the Division of Career and Technical Education, the director, and I are going to come and kind of talk to you a little bit about the portion that applies to you as high school teachers and college partners. Here is Secretary Key. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. We're really excited today. This is something that we've been talking about for a number of years. We'll get into specifics of this certified teaching assistant, but let me just give you some background about this. You know, when I came on board almost 5 years ago now, one of the things we looked at was, as you know, we had a precipitous decline in the number of Arkansans in education preparation programs. I think our high water mark in 2013-14 was 8,255. We saw in the years to follow that reduced by over half. Now we are seeing an upswing. That upswing, we're nowhere near 800 or 8,255, but we have seen significant growth in the last few years. And I was just talking to Dr. Grove Scott. She said that here on this campus, their program has doubled in the time that she's been here. So we are seeing an upswing. Why did that happen? Why did we see such a decline? I believe, and I think many of you would agree, this had some measure of impact on it. There was a time when the news about education was always bad. Right? I mean, there wasn't a time where education was bad. There was a time where the news about education was bad. If you turn on the TV, it was usually some kind of, if they were going to talk about education, it was going to be something negative. But I think we've seen a shift. We have seen a shift. I've seen it in the legislature. I've seen it coming straight from Governor Hutchinson, where he talks about the positive impact that teachers have had on his life. In Arkansas, we have been very intentional about telling positive stories about teaching, about education, and I think now our young people are once again seeing that education is a noble profession. It is a noble route to impacting our future. And we have to make the pathways easier, simpler, more affordable, all of those things. We need to create options for our students today so that they can continue seeing or taking advantage of those opportunities, and they will continue to see the growth in that. One of the biggest advocates is, I don't know if you have ever listened to Craig O'Neill, but Craig O'Neill has been one of the biggest cheerleaders for teaching in the state of Arkansas. And if anybody in the state that gets Channel 11, usually going to hear Craig talking about teaching. He's in schools reading. He's doing things that are very positive. That's the type of messaging that we want to continue. We've really tried to push at the department, and we've reorganized the department. We brought on board and created a position, and though many of you remember Megan Abels, the year after she completed her Teacher of the Year with us, we created a position so that she could tell teacher stories through social media, through traditional media, through events like this all over the state. That wasn't enough. It wasn't enough just to tell the positive stories. That had a big impact, but it wasn't enough. We really had to look at the pathways. So today we're going to describe parts of this pathway. Parts of it, as you see on our chart, still under construction. We live in Arkansas. Our highways are always under construction in some form or fashion. But let's talk about and just start at that basic. I mentioned to the students, if you were in there, you heard me talk to the students about the stories that we hear, the stories of people who are in the profession today, and they can relate that to a time where they had a teacher in elementary school or middle school that had an impact on them, and that is what made them. The experience with that teacher is what made them want to pursue teaching. Well, we want to create more of that, and we really want to work with our Division of Career and Technical Education to have opportunities for students in elementary and middle school to explore careers, not just education, but explore careers. But let's think about, what has that been? What has that focus been? So when you've heard people talk about exploring careers, typically what do you hear connected with that? What field? Science, technology, STEM, right? We've really put a focus on that. The liberal arts, that's not something we've really talked about. Teaching, that's not something we've really talked about. We want to create opportunities for our elementary and middle school kids so they can see what the entire spectrum of opportunities are for them. And we cannot leave education out. We want to make sure they know that teaching is something that is attainable for them, that is rewarding for them, and that is something that they can see themselves doing. So we also want to move it into a situation where once they get energized, they get motivated, they have an opportunity in high school to see that work pay off. Now imagine, if you will, those of you that have been in education a while, what would your classrooms, think about your worst classroom you ever had, the rowdiest kids you ever had, the toughest year you ever had, and how much difference could it have made if you had had a trained, qualified person, a teaching assistant, to be there in that classroom with you? Do you think that could have made a difference? We think it can. We've seen it. Our folks on staff at the division, they've told me stories about some of those situations where they just wish they had extra help. We want to create, as part of this pathway, an opportunity for high school students to get what they need to be able to pass the certification exam, and that they can roll right into an opportunity to be in those classrooms as a teaching assistant or paraprofessional. And our team will talk more about that in detail here in a second. But that's not where we want to stop. We want to make these pathways very clear. You think about the medical pathway, and you think about all those opportunities. If you're going to be a nurse, you can start out as a CNA or an LPN. What are those pathways that follow that? You can become a registered nurse. You can get a bachelor's degree in nursing. You can get a master's degree in nursing. I mean, think about that pathway. That's not been as clear for education. We want to make it that clear in education, because we want our young people to see that it is not just that 4-year degree that is the only place you have to get to before you can actually be in a classroom. We also create experience when we do this. We believe that the experience in the classroom will, one, it will encourage and motivate them because they will see that they can do it. They will pursue the next step. And one of those next steps, as you see, that's under still working on that. But technical certificates, not quite to that level of an associate's degree, but say an education technologist, somebody that knows how to integrate technology in the classroom. Those are the ideas that we're talking about there. But what these things will also do, we believe, is because we know that a large percentage of our teachers that leave the profession within the first 3 to 5 years, many times it's because, one, they don't feel like they have the support, or maybe they don't have it's not meeting the salary needs of their family, but sometimes it's just they don't feel like they are capable of handling all of the things that come at them. This process, this roadmap, will build in experience so that once they hit that 3 to 5 year mark, they're not just talking about 3 to 5 years experience, they've actually had more of that classroom experience, and hopefully have a team of folks around them that can provide them support they need to stay with it. And then the fourth opportunity there is the Associate of Science in Education. We have financial aid programs that have been modified over the last several years that create great opportunities. Concurrent credit for high school students, but when they get into a 2-year college, then the Arkansas Futures program is something that they can have access to that helps, again, pay for those hours that they need as they're building on this pathway. And then the bachelor's degree in education, anyone wants to talk about a community that has done a really good job in that, in creating a local partnership, look at Batesville Southside, where they have partnered with their 2-year college, UA Community College of Batesville. They have partnered with Lyon College, where they really nailed it down to where their students could actually graduate going through a similar pathway with no student debt. You know, how many times can we say that nowadays? No student debt, and fully licensed at the end of their pathway, and a shorter time period. So instead of that traditional pathway where you're maybe 21, 22, 23, before you can fully be engaged in that classroom, you can do that earlier, 20, 21 years old, because of and think about retirement. Think about all those things that are important for our young people that they don't understand yet, but when they get my age, it becomes a whole lot clearer about how important that is. So creating opportunities, creating those options, that's what we are doing here. And then obviously, the department and the division of elementary and secondary education, we are always looking to see, we in our Arkansas ESSA plan, if you haven't had a chance to read that, I would encourage you to read that. It's on our website. But the important part that you don't have to read is that not only are we encouraging districts to engage in continuous cycles of inquiry, continuous improvement. School improvement is not the job just for lower performing schools, it is the job for all schools, because all of their students need that continuous improvement by us, the adults. Well, that goes for us too. That goes for us at the division, goes for us within all the units of the Department of Education. We are always looking to see how we can better support these initiatives, how we can better support our teachers in the classroom, how we can better support our students in the pathway. And that's where your feedback is so critical to making that happen. So as we talk about this, as the team comes up and kind of goes through some of the details, what I would ask you to do is, you're already a partner in this, because you're teaching, you're supporting, you're doing something in this pathway. I hope you see where you fit in this pathway. But a critical aspect that I would ask for you to engage in is feedback, because we don't always see what you see. We don't see what is happening in all areas of the state, and your feedback where you see, hey, this part works well, but this part needs a little bit. Or our kids are falling through the cracks here, or we see the potential where they could fall through the cracks here. What can we do to shore that up, to solidify it? So although we have this pathway, we don't want potholes, this roadmap. Again, back to why we're in Arkansas, our roads are always under construction. We don't want potholes to appear in this roadmap that create those barriers and those obstacles for our students. We want to create smooth, completely embedded at every step of the way the support that they need. So we also, at the end, we want to leave room and time for some questions. So I will ask Charlie, Dr. Kramers to come up and kind of give you more detail about it, and then answer whatever questions you have at the end.
Alrighty, so what we're going to really focus on in that roadmap is really the certified teaching assistant part of that, because that's something that you can earn in high school. It's already been available, but we really have never fleshed out how a student could receive this. So we have been working ever since the transformation has brought us together. DESE and CTE have really been working closely to try to figure out how is this going to look, how can we roll this out, and how can we promote it. So first off, we always want to start with our vision and mission. This is one of the most student-focused things that I've really been involved in on several levels, because not only are we thinking about students currently and trying to get them on a pathway to a career, but we're also thinking about future students and how to make sure all of our teachers are well prepared to even meet the needs of our future students. And then, of course, our mission at the department is to provide leadership support and service. And so again, we hope to lead this effort, but also support you in implementing it, and then receive that feedback that Secretary Key talked about, and make sure that we can make this the best that it can be for all of our stakeholders. So for the pre-educator program of study, and this is going to be a new program of study that includes teacher cadet and orientation to teaching. So if you teach orientation to teaching, you are probably aware that that course has changed names. It is no longer, for the next year, it's not going to be called Orientation to Teaching 1 and Orientation to Teaching 2. It's going to be called Foundations of Teaching and then Methods of Teacher Instruction. Teacher cadets remaining the same, but on that pathway, that program of study for completer status, they can be interchangeable. You can take either one. And then the first course in that pathway is lifespan development, which was formerly child development and parenting. So you might already have students in your programs that have taken these 3 courses or that are finishing them up. If they do that, and of course there is an optional, youth apprenticeship or internship. So that is optional, but it's not required to receive the CTA. And they are a member of either FCCLA or Educators Rising. They pass the Parapro assessment, then they are eligible to receive this certified teaching assistant credential, and they can receive it even this school year. So again, teacher cadet 1 and 2 are now allowed to be used in the program of study along with lifespan development. So if you have in your school, if you have students that have taken those 2 courses, or we don't have a ton of teacher cadet 2 courses on the books currently. This hopefully will make that where you would like to include that, please reach out to me or your partner college on how you can make that happen. But that is now included. So you can now, it's considered a career tech pathway. You can use startup funding to start a teacher cadet program if you don't already have one going. You can use Perkins funding for sustainability of the program. And again, if I'm saying anything wrong, Dr. Kramers, you could feel free to jump in at any time, because she is the career tech guru for sure. And again, you'll just work with your local CTE coordinator to find out about that funding and everything. And so you will also your students that are in teacher cadet can also be considered program completers. So that's it's just kind of a change. You that are already doing orientation and teaching, this makes a lot of sense to you. If you do teacher cadet, you might not be as aware of these things, but we're trying to just bring the 2 together, and then just so it's not so confusing, and so they're kind of both can utilize the funding available. And again, back to there's all the required 38 courses. Also, schools are required to offer 9 credits of career education. So teacher cadet can now be included in that as a career tech course. This program of study now can be used to meet that requirement. It still falls under the occupational area of family and consumer science, but any teacher can teach any of those 3 courses. You do not have to have a FACS license to teach Lifespan, TC1, TC2, or the orientation and teaching courses. So if you would like to offer those courses, any licensure code can teach those courses. Just like similar to orientation and teaching previously in Teacher Cadet. And then we really want to, and when you, even if you're in orientation and teaching, you did have to do for your startup grant, from what I'm understanding, you did have to show how you are partnering with local colleges. So that partnership, and I know teacher cadets are required to have it, but we really are encouraging you to partner with a local college or university for this program. Whether that partnership does not have to include concurrent credit, we encourage that, because like Secretary Key said, we really want to make sure that we give the students the opportunity to earn those credits in high school. But this is not to mean that orientation and teaching, it has to become a concurrent credit course like Teacher Cadet is. But we want to move that direction. We would love for us to work with our colleges and universities to try to make those options available for all high school students to earn those courses early in high school. So I think that now Dr. Kramer can speak to you again.
Thank you, Charlie. Isn't this exciting? I mean, just hearing Secretary Key talk about it, hearing Charlie, it's just been such a great collaboration. So we're thrilled to be working on this together. So the Certified Teaching Assistant is a part of this high school pre-educator pathway, and this is an important piece of the puzzle. So that roadmap, it is so extremely important to have something that student can not just hold in their hand, but they can share with their family, and they can use it for a living wage while they're trying to go to school and they're gaining experience, livable wages. Just what an exciting opportunity for students. And I'm excited this morning. My daughter's sitting in an education class on campus this morning here at UCA herself. So a lot of it is very personal to families and what a difference that can make for their future and future success. So for the Certified Teaching Assistant, basically to be able to receive that, students will have to meet their qualifications that they would meet to be a paraprofessional. The student has received pedagogical training, and they've completed 80 to 100 hours of field experience. To be qualified, when they receive the Certified Teaching Assistant, what that means is that they'll be qualified to fulfill instructional support roles within the school. They can help tutor, they can help with skills practice with students, project work, digital instruction, whatever can be that assistant support role in that classroom for the lead teacher in that room. Districts and colleges, we hope that you will help to support the CTA, because the role on the other end is making sure once they have that they can be fully utilized. And some of that may be schools and districts allowing a little bit of flexible work scheduling, and even for the college component to say, we'll take that experiential learning that this CTA will receive, because they will be far beyond a student that comes through as a paraprofessional in their skill. So the following steps will be required for the CTA, and students, as Charlie mentioned, students can start using their coursework. If they're graduating this year and they've met all requirements, so as a 9th grader they've already been working on this pathway, then they can apply starting this May at graduation to be the first cohort of CTAs coming from the state of Arkansas, and that's really exciting. So they would complete the full education program of study, which was the pathway Charlie showed, that would have the lifespan development in either your teacher cadet path or your what would have been called the orientation to teaching. And you noticed on the slide that she shared that we have rebranded that with different names, but it's basically the orientation to teaching if you've been in the family and consumer sciences pathway. You pass the parapro assessment and meet all requirements for a parapro. If you are, of course, a parapro in special education, you have some additional requirements and modules that you go through. Complete the 80 to 100 hours of field experience. So once you've completed those, then on the website for the career and technical education, it will all be linked together. So you won't have a problem finding it. It will be on the Department of Education website, our website. They're going to all interlink together. And so you'll be able to go to do an online application. You will upload an unofficial transcript to show you've completed all those courses. You'll upload a copy of your successful passing of the parapro assessment. You'll upload your fieldwork experience log documenting your 80 to 100 hours, field hours. And then once that's all reviewed and approved, then the student will receive, and student and or graduate, wherever they are in that process, an electronic CTA certificate, and that'll be distributed from the Arkansas Department of Education. So very exciting, and Secretary Key, I'll even put out there, it'll probably have his fabulous signature on it. So what a wonderful thing. We hope, we'll ask, so that has a wonderful recognition for students. So with that, we want to ask if there are any questions about the pathway, the roadmap. Any of us are happy to answer those questions. So any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can any teacher teach the youth apprenticeship class?
For youth apprenticeship, there are specific requirements. That's why it's not a part of the required, because there are some special pieces of the work-based learning component. So we can make sure we get that detail back out there. So there are a little bit of differences on the endorsement for that, but we'll confirm and get back with you once you get into the work-based learning. The youth apprenticeship or career practicum, we want to have the least amount of barriers possible. So I just need to go back and check with the work-based learning details that are there. We want to make sure it's aligned so those students can go through seamless. But it may be that there's somebody that is a teacher of record that has the endorsement or will be working on the endorsement so that that's possible. Thank you for that question, Molly. Yes, ma'am.
Has there been any discussion about someone who would graduate from high school not having met these requirements, but they want to then get this CTA, and how that would work in a higher ed setting?
Well, the goal of this one is it's a high school pathway. So we'd want them to go through this specific pathway in high school to earn the CTA. So are you saying somebody that has not gone through that pathway?
Let's say they graduated from high school, they didn't get what they needed here, but they decided they still wanted to be a CTA.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way, or could we have conversations, maybe is the way to start the question, around how they could do that at a community college or a four-year institution?
I think we could probably definitely take suggestions. I know at the moment, there is the technical certifications that would be the next step. And so really this piece of it, the CTA, is the high school component. And so the next step would be the certifications, the technical certifications, which is kind of before they get to the associate's degree. So it allows that kind of step in between, and hopefully that will address. And because it's under construction, that's why it's not as clear like what that component would look like. Yes, ma'am.
So from a two-year perspective, is there going to be in the construction process, along with what she's asking, is there going to be a path for to get to our associate's degree to also earn the TC that would just be perfectly aligned with that associate's, and then they can be on their way. We do it in early childhood, and so I would love to be a part of that construction process to say, these are the courses, this is what we accept, this is, and then it can transfer to the field.
That's definitely the goal, to be able to achieve that, because the cleaner the pathway, the more students get through the pipeline. And so that's definitely the goal. And as development of that process of the technical certifications, we'll have stakeholder feedback and input and work with higher education to make sure that that is the post-secondary institutions, to make sure that we're getting that clear and right.
What's the academic year goal set to have it established?
For the technical certifications?
We really haven't, we're just in the beginning discussion phases of that. One year, I'm being told, in 1 year, we're going to have those in place. We're going to roll them out. All right.
Let's see, I think yours went up first.
Our school district won't hire anyone in that position under 21 years of age because we've approached them. Is there any kind of, what's the law on that, or is any gray, is that just a district by district decision or what?
I don't want to speak to, I'm not sure, I want to answer this one correctly.
It's 18, the requirement for parapro is a high school. I'm under the impression that's a district decision.
That's a
So,
district.
yes. And that's, for us, the biggest thing, the biggest sell for the CTA is to make sure that our districts buy in. So if we could get our districts on board and see that this person has received pedagogical training and field experience and passed the parapro test and is interested in becoming a teacher. And especially for our hard-to-staff regions of the state, this is a person that probably will come home to you. So if we could really just target those folks in high school, get them this credential and work with them to get them to that license, that's really the dream of the CTA, and it has a lot to do with the districts.
Let me just say, a lot of times as we go through a process like this, we do find out there are local policies that may be obstacles to programs. As we have done with superintendents on grad rate, where we remind them, hey, if you have a graduation requirement that's more than the state minimum, we're not saying you can't do it, but just know you have to go all the way back into 8th grade to understand how that may impact your graduation rate. This is another one of those conversations we would have with superintendents to say, look, if you have these policies that are local policies, we're not saying you have to change them, but if you want to take advantage of these opportunities to get this pipeline built up in your district, you might want to look at it again. But so we're making notes. So all these questions, Carly is taking down, and we're going to either make that part of future presentations or get the responses you need and get back to you.
Let's see. Yes.
I was wondering if you could describe a little bit about the 80 to 100 hours, how that's structured, or plans for that.
That is built into the current teacher cadet and orientation to teaching pathways currently. So it's already a part of their CTE pathway. So it's already built into the curriculum. So they have the time in the classroom, and then they have time that they're building field hours and log those hours.
So are those field hours in the district that they're currently student in?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
Typically, yes. Okay, and there was another hand too. Did that answer okay? Okay, any other questions? Yes?
Did you say earlier that you did not have to be SAC certified to teach lifespan development?
That is correct. We don't want any barriers, since this is a very important thing for Arkansas. So any teacher licensure will be able to teach this pathway. Any teacher licensure. We want as many students coming into education to serve the state of Arkansas as possible. So where it was just a family consumer sciences option, now it is a anybody option. And this will help us build the pipeline. So the great benefit for family consumer science teachers would be to help those that have not been in a CTE pathway help kind of understand the process, because those doing teacher cadet may not have understood the full program of study, the full pathway, kind of the language of CTE. So that's where you can be a great resource within your school and your district to kind of help, because really this is something we all need to work on collaboratively to make sure we have a strong teacher pipeline.
So for I'm just making sure I understand. So the child development and parenting course that was changed the name to lifespan development, is that what you're referencing is no longer needing effects?
That is correct. So that course code can be taught by any licensure, any licensure.
Is there training provided for those teachers outside? I mean, because, teaching courses, you teach, so, if you stay in that content, but that content is very difficult. It's pretty specific, specialized to an area, and I'm just concerned that someone would get the depth, like I don't teach that class. I'm fact certified, I teach different fact classes. But even if I was going to step in and teach that class, I feel at this point in my career, I would need just some type of support, or I wouldn't feel qualified to do it.
Thank you for that. And we do have professional development that has been built in with the Family Consumer Sciences. So what I could see this looking as is that would be open to all, not just selected just to Family Consumer Science teachers, but that now that PT would be, that professional development, the PD would be available to anyone who would want to be teaching that course in preparedness. And then of course there are standards and frameworks that also help support along with the professional development of the course. Yes, ma'am.
Lifespan development has specific minimum equipment tied to it. Who is responsible for that minimum equipment then if an FCS teacher is not able in any way to teach it?
That's a good question. So one of the slides did mention, as Charlie shared, now any of those schools, teachers can apply for a state startup grant on a competitive basis for that program of study. So it's not just, it's all this pathway for high school students. So that school would have that opportunity to apply for the equipment pathway just like everyone else.
But is it still under the FCS umbrella then? Because it's under our program of study, or is it not under FCS?
It is for all, but it is under the Family and Consumer Sciences program of study, but all are able to be a part of that. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the field experience log. How are you wanting that? Are you wanting the reflections? Or are you just wanting an attendance log? What does that look like?
We will give details, and we're going to launch that link soon on the website, so it will have the additional details on the field log. Within Teacher Cadet, that is all also built in. And so, Charlie, do you want to talk about the log at all for just a moment? And I think
For Teacher Cadet, they have a field experience log, so that would be fine. That would work, just to document your experience that's required for those courses, and that would be the equivalent to the 80 would be the minimum. But yeah, so just the documentation that you currently use on Teacher Cadet side for your courses to log field experience will suffice. Dr. Pfeffer, did you want to say something?
Okay, I think Dr. Pfeffer is going to mention something. So thank you so much from our end, and we're happy to stay after and answer any other questions that you may have following the brunch.
Good morning, and it's obvious from your questions here, I'm really excited because of the level of expertise. We've got experienced folks here in the room who you've already been doing a lot of great work with students. And what we want to do with this pathway, and I'm just going to take you back to the roadmap and highlight a few things that have been said. This is a roadmap that is pulling together some things that are already in place, but also opening us up to a whole lot of new pathways. And as Secretary Key said, you know, the roadway, some parts of the roadway are still under construction. For some parts of the roadway, we're still making refinements to the routes we're taking. You know, when you plug in your GPS, a lot of times there are several different ways to even get to that initial starting point. And that's what we've really developed with this idea of taking the CTE, the Career Technical Pathway, the Teacher Cadet pathway, and merging them together. And what that's going to look like in one school versus another school, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be unique. It's going to be unique to the staff that you have. It's going to be unique to possibly the programs you already have in place. The desires of the students. One of the reasons why it's a great time to really bring these two things together and to elevate, we're going through and getting ready to submit our Perkins 5 plan under the reauthorization of Perkins, really having an opportunity for our state to look at what the opportunities that we have for students underneath the career technical education umbrella, and to create robust programs of study that have courses that increase in specificity for students and lead to industry certifications. And that's why we're bringing this to you today, and we're starting the conversation, and you're starting to give us feedback and some of the questions that are going to require us to keep making refinements, and we're going to do that, and we're going to be responsive. But I think the biggest message to take away today is that the opportunities for you to take the programs that are already going on with your students and looking at what the unique, the resources you have in your district, the interests you have in your community, bringing all that together, we don't want there to be any barriers to you successfully implementing this. So whichever route you take on this first stop on the journey, for those that maybe don't have the full experience in high school but get into higher ed or the workforce and want that opportunity, that's where the next two steps are going to come into place. And our goal is by the fall of 2021 to have those next steps really fleshed out for you. The K-12 education workforce is the largest single employment group in the state. Okay, that statistic has just really, it makes me stop and think every time I think about it. The K-12 workforce is the largest single employer group in the state. And about 5 years ago, when Secretary Key was talking about when we really started taking a look at our teacher pipeline, we weren't looking at it in just terms of numbers. We started really looking at it and thinking about what impact does this have on our state. And knowing that that workforce is such a large driver of everything related to economics, related to the future growth of opportunities in our state, we have to treat it as an important component of the workforce. And I think by creating this kind of a pathway where people can see where they can merge into an education career at different points on a journey. One of the things we don't have on there is the post-bachelor's degree, because we have a lot of people right now entering our workforce even after they've already had a bachelor's degree and have some work experiences, and they come back for that additional preparation. So just keep in mind that this is the beginning of a lot of new opportunities, and all of the little details that maybe we don't have fully listed out for you today, we're going to take care of those, and your questions are really, really going to help us. So I think it is an exciting time for students. I think it's an exciting time for educators, because the possibilities are limitless. And one more thing I don't think we mentioned today, because we do have this pathway outline that leads to an industry recognized certification, students now can qualify for the concurrent challenge scholarship within this education pathway. So it will actually allow them to qualify for funds to help them pay for concurrent credit while they're in high school. And that was not something that was available before we had this defined pathway with the certification. So it's been very important to us over this last year to get this to this point today, and thank you for being patient with us and for continuing on with your questions.